Hello and welcome to the Learning Objective 1 Exercise 1, when we'll show you how to do graphical representation of data. You can download this file from our website, and as you can see, it has three tabs. Exercise, when we'll do the calculation step by step. Then exercise solution, where you can compare, the result of our calculation with the calculation already completed. And then there is a last tab, which is question, when where you will be required to do a similar exercise for yourself and later on submit it to our website. And after you do so, you'll receive another file with solution to this exercise. So let's get to it. We have here quite a large data set. It's actually just over 1200 data points, and it's historical data of the S&P 500 index and of its daily values. You can always see a date and then like when the value on which the market opened and on the value on which it closed. And what we want to do is create a probability distribution of daily changes. So first of all, we'll be calculating the daily change in absolute values, then in percentages, then we'll split the whole calculation or the whole data set of the daily changes into categories, and then we'll count the categories of how often the changes occur in certain values, and then we'll plot it in like nice and tidy chart. So to calculate daily changes, it's quite a simple formula. So you basically write equal sign the closing value of the index minus the closing value of the index the previous day, and press enter, and you receive the daily change of the index that particular day. And then we want to copy it all the way down, which is, we can either like press Control C and just like take it down, which is sometimes a little bit cumbersome. So what we'll do is we'll go to the field left, go and then use a shortcut Shift Control down arrow, which will take us quite neatly down to the latest data point, and we'll press to the cell to the right and do the same thing, Control Shift arrow up, which will take us back, and go one cell down and press Control V, and it quite neatly copies all the cells, all the formulas in there. The only exception is the last one, because we don't have a previous day's value, so we'll just delete it because we don't need it. With daily changes, it's something similar. You basically just write a formula, equal sign, the daily change, divided by the previous day's value, because that's our base. Again, we get the daily change is quite small, the first and the last date in the data set. And then we'll copy it all the way down. Control Shift down arrow, click to the right, Control Shift up arrow, one cell down, copy it in. And now we have plotted all of the daily changes throughout the whole history we have downloaded. And to create the probability distribution, we want to split the data set into categories and that count, how often the daily change occurs in in any specific category. So first we have to identify the smallest and the biggest number in this whole data set, which would be quite difficult to actually do by just looking at it. So we'll use a shortcut. We use formula max, which will identify the biggest number in the whole data set. We'll go to the first cell, press Control Shift down arrow, enter, and the biggest number in the whole data set is 4.74%. We can do the same thing with min. And the smallest number in the whole data set is minus 6.66%. Then we'll determine the range, these values in what range they actually occur. So which is easy to do. You basically just want to see a difference between these two numbers. So it's 4.74 minus minus 6.66, and it's 11.4%. So it's close to 12%. So if I wanted to know approximately how large the categories would be, I could just divide it by 12 and receive 0.95%, which is kind of an awkward size for the categories. So we'll probably do some rounding up. So I will probably want to round it up to 1%. So I use a function roundup, and it asks me to how many digits I want to round it, and I want it probably to whole percent, which is 2 digits because percentage is 0.01, so there's 2 decimal points, so 2, and indeed the category width probably would be 1%. And then like number of categories, it's the range divided by category width, 11.4. Well, we probably don't want 11.4 categories, so again, round up. Excuse me, once more, round up. And again, like this time it's actually not in percentages, it's in whole numbers, because if we divide percentage by percentage, we get absolute number. So it's 0 and it should come at 12, and indeed it does. So now we have number categories, we have the category width, and we have maximum minimum values. So now we have to determine the category lower and upper bounds, and I already have a table here prepared for 12 categories. So the category lowest bound will be the lowest number, minus 6.66%, and the category upper bound will be that number, or let's say this number, plus category width. And I should really include plus in there instead of equal. And here we go. So in this category, like the first category is minus 6.66 to minus 5.66. And now we basically want to replicate, kind of follow with the category. So this one is easy. We'll just use the upper bound to be a lower bound of the next category. And this one is again always this number plus the category width. So I'll just take this formula over here and I lock the H10 cell so it doesn't change when I copy it down. I do so by pressing F4, and the dollar sign over here appeared, because you can see it means that if I copy the cell, it doesn't change. And now I just copy it down, and you can see it copied nicely, and now I can actually copy it all the way down, and it will create the boundaries of the categories quite nicely for me. The next step is probably the most complicated part of it. You have to create the functions which will calculate how many times it occurs in the whole data set in these two categories. To do so, we'll use the COUNTIF functions, and I'll show you how to construct them together. So COUNTIF, choose it from the offered option. So first it wants to know the range. Well, it's easy. Press on the first percentage change, Control Shift down arrow, and that's the whole data set. And there's a problem in here. That's because I'm not done with the formula yet, so I'll just keep editing it. So that's the range column, and now I have to write the criteria. And the criteria is I want to calculate the count the data points which are between these two boundaries. So I press first on the boundary H14, and I want it to be bigger than this value. So, and I do so by uh, by putting the condition in the formula. Quotations close, and then I have to join it with the, oh, sorry, I have to actually do it this way. And that's our condition. And if I just press enter now, you can see that actually calculate each data point in there. It's because I just used the lower boundary. And of course, every data point in the whole data set is bigger than the lowest number in the data set. So I have to replicate the whole calculation once more. Range, it's the same thing as it was before. So I'll just lazily copy it in. And again, quotations, bigger or equal, close quotations, plus sign, and but in this case it won't be the already used lower boundary, it will be upper boundary. So what I'm actually doing here is I calculate every number which is higher than 6.66 but lower than 5.66. Press enter, and of course, it's only one single daily change which actually happened to occur in the whole data set in that value. There was probably one large drop, one daily drop during that period, but which didn't reoccur again. And then I want to copy it down, but I still have to like a little bit change the formulas, because the range, if I copy it down, it won't include all of the numbers. So I have to log the ranges. So F4, still one, but if I copy it down, it's nicely populated now. I can really quickly check, and it counted 1257 points, data points. And if I do the same thing for the whole data set, indeed, you can see that it calculated, or it counted each data point in the whole data set. So I know I didn't make any mistake anywhere. And now I want to calculate the relative frequency. So, well, that's quite easy, because we already did the difficult part with the countif functions. So, uh, equal sign, absolute number, minus the sum of all, like basically all of the data points, which is, as we know, 1257. But I can just include it in there as a formula, in the future. For example, if I wanted to change something or add some data, I want the formula still recalculated for me. So I use the sum function. Oh, sorry. Here we go. And it's 0.08%. And again, I probably want to lock this part of the formula because I will copy it down and I don't want it to change. So, and now I can control C, control V, copy it in. And because it's a relative frequency, it should be 100% altogether. So, and I can uh, quickly check by highlighting and checking this sum over here, and indeed it's a 100%. So that's quite neat. So the last step, I want to calculate the cumulative relative frequency, which is basically you know uh, these numbers but summed together as you progress from 0 to 100%. So like the first cell is just the cell itself. The second cell is sum of these two, which I'll use the sum function again, choose it from the list, highlight. But because I want to copy it on and I don't want to like change it to formula each time, I'm going to lock the first cell so it doesn't change. And indeed, this one plus this one is this one. And then I'll copy it down. First check is it should end up at 100%, and it does. And then, I can just click inside and I can see that it sums up all of the data points or all of the frequencies from before. The same over here. If I click, you can see that it nicely sums up all of the previous frequencies, and that's a cumulative frequency. Of course, you could see how incredible laborious this actually is, and Excel, of course, offers much easier way. So I'll show you quickly how to do it. Uh, you can use something called pivot tables, which if you're not familiar with them, I really recommend to actually do some research and kind of learn how to use them a little bit because they save a lot of time. Uh, to use them, all you have to do is press pivot table, then you have to choose the range, which I'm going to choose right now. You always want to highlight the labels as well, because if you don't, it recognizes the first part of the table as a label and kind of excludes it from the data, which you don't want because it's a really easy way how to make a mistake. So again, Control Shift down arrow highlights the whole distribution. I actually go up 1 point because I'm interested only in daily changes, and where I want to put the table, I want to put it somewhere over here. And we are not done yet. So we are interested in daily changes. So I put them over here. I put them also in the values. I want to count them, so I'll change the field to count. And so far it doesn't really tell us anything. It just tells us like every daily change with that it occurred once, which is not really so much telling. So I'll right click inside of the first column in the pivot table, press group, and it kind of like already sets it up for you, category with 1%, and the smallest and highest number it identifies itself. So all I have to do is to press OK, and indeed it calculated the very same thing as I did over here. As you can see, these numbers and these numbers are exactly the same. I want to have the relative and cumulative as well, so all I have to do again is to put them in the values once more. And now I change the value settings. Oh, sorry, not the value settings. It's perfectly okay to, kind of explore the options in there a little bit. Show values as, and I want to show them as percent of column total, which is the relative frequency. Again, you can see that this column over here right now is exactly the one as over here. It's kind of neat, isn't it? Oh, sorry. If you double click on a condensed table or pivot table, it always shows you the source data, and we don't need that right now. And the same thing we'll do with the last column, which is the cumulative relative frequency. And what we want to do is percent of running total. And indeed, it did exactly the same thing as we have over here. And so I basically did the whole thing again, but much shorter time. And it's also this way is like much less prone to error, because in the countif functions you can always like make a little mistake. In a pivot table is quite difficult to do so. And the last step will create the chart. So I'm going to come from the original data set, highlight these two columns, insert chart. We want normal column chart, but it's not really so nice anymore, so we'll do some editing of it. Yeah, sorry, I have to do it again. So first of all, I don't like that the cumulative frequency and the relative frequency are basically on the same scale. So click in the cumulative frequency and double click on it actually. And these options appear on the right side. I change it to the secondary axis, and you can see that on this side the secondary axis open and it's a different scale than this one. What I also want to do is to change the chart type but only for this particular data set, which I probably want this one, and it's quite nice. It kind of reset uh, the the secondary axis, so I'll have to do it again by double clicking on it, secondary axis, and it's much nicer now. I can also change the chart type. Just when you're in design over here, you can choose many of the provided templates. You can also design it yourself, but this one is quite handy because it's really fast. And also, daily change of the index is a continuous variable, so it's kind of silly that it shows these gaps between. So what I want to do is to change it. So again, double click on the column, and there's a gap width over here. If you go to chart options and you decrease it, and that's quite nice. Maybe we can also do some formatting of the border, so we put a solid line in there, so it kind of shows the differences in the columns even though there's no space in between them. And last thing we want to do is change the title of the chart, so it's S&P 500 daily change. So thank you very much for your attention. I hope you will follow this tutorial. You try to do the calculation for yourself, and then you can try your hands on the question, try to complete it and submit it to our website. And see you in the next exercise. And thank you very much for your attention once again.